Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Misfortunate podcast named Tentative. This is episode 4. I'm Reggie.
This is Jen.
Aaron, man.
So actually, Aaron can do a little bit longer introduction since he hasn't been here with us. Go ahead and tell us about yourself, Aaron. What job do you play, and what server are you from?
I'm on Gilgamesh. I've been playing Bard this tier. I'm a try-hard, whiny bitch.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm always, I don't know. You got any questions? I like to talk shop too, so.
We are going to be talking shop today, sir. Definitely talking shop.
Sam Mains Hatem. It's Aaron Hellfire of Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
And, you two?
What's that?
And then Jabe and Sora.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm Jay Black.
I'm Sora.
Currently a Balmung, soon to be Gilgamesh.
You stop.
You sound so defeated.
So we're going to start today's podcast by talking about the meta in FF14 and does it really matter? We all kind of have an opinion on this, and I would like to quote Aaron's favorite person, Mr. Happy, that the meta doesn't really matter, that he cleared everything on Monk and the meta can go right where the sun don't shine. We'll just go down the list here, and everybody can kind of get a shot to talk. We'll start with Sora, go to Jin, Aaron, and then Jabe. And then if I need to add anything, I will. So go ahead, Sora. Does the meta really matter?
Yes and no. The question is, it's better to ask, who does the meta matter to? Because at majority of level of the game, I'd say a fair 90%, maybe even 99%, the meta really doesn't matter to you. Playing good is enough to get you where you need to be. Meta won't really matter much for average play, even in progression, right? Any comp that's not, double dipping in roles and jobs should be able to clear any piece of content. That's what the dev team have envisioned. But for the 1%, yeah, the meta does matter to them. The whole shtick is abusing all the resources that all jobs are capable to their highest level. So it's yes and no. It's better asked who does it matter to.
Does it matter to you?
To me, yes, it matters to me. To an extent. I do appreciate good synergy. I prefer not to raid in a composition where we're just kind of face rolling all kinds of synergy, because then it hurts my performance relative to other casters. So it does matter to me, but does it matter in general? It's based off of the player that you are.
So Jin, little bit about Jin and Sora. Sora plays Red Mage and Jin plays Monk. So, when talking about does the meta matter, or does the meta, when does the matter meta, Jin, how do you fit in this?
Meta matter.
Meta matter. Alright, so I've always been a kind of an underdog kind of guy when it comes to this kind of thing. I've never played the class that people want me to play to improve their numbers. I've always played the class that I'm always at my best at. And that's just how I started. I started off as a monk at the beginning of this game. I was actually dog shit, but then I just got better with the more raid and exposure to extreme fights that I was put into. It's just what you do. You want to be at your best. I think being at the best of your performance and, be at the top of your game is what matters when it comes to doing the end game stuff. That's actually what you should be striving for. But a lot of people don't do that, and like Sora said, a lot of people are very are just gonna brute force their way into getting a clear instead of actually doing, looking inside yourself and say, can I do better at this job, or can I do better as a player? But some people don't take that into consideration. I think the meta is misunderstood sometimes.
I'll
Like,
agree with that. Yeah.
It's you guys can interject if you want. I'm open for like opinions, but so the main meta, as we all know, is Paladin, Warrior, Scholar, Astro, Ninja, Dragoon, Bard, and Summoner, with some exceptions being Red Mage. Take a Black Mage if you want to do a lot more damage.
It's a flexible term. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean one thing. There are multiple metas: progression meta, speed kill meta. I guess if you want to, casual meta, which in case jobs that fare better on average without low, input. So samurai and black mage are very casual meta friendly because you don't need your party to be good to do your thing.
And yeah, I agree with that. There is a flexibility, and I think the meta could be a little more flexible, but it's not. People don't see it that way. They don't. They just. When I say it's misunderstood, it's the fact that people actually took in the time to make a couple of calculations here and there, and just like weigh the stats of how this thing is supposed to perform, and they say this is actually the best comp possible when you align everything, when you're actually playing at the highest skill possible. But a lot of people took that as the holy bible of what you're supposed to be doing for this job, and if you do anything outside of that, you're a sinful, casual piece of shit.
Well, that's
And
to interject a little bit.
Yeah.
The mathematical equations for why you do certain things on a job isn't meta. That's like how to play the job to its best abilities. Sure, there's some level of flexibility involved with certain jobs, like for example, Earthly Star with Astrologian. You can move that around, and it's not necessarily wrong. But like standard openers and rotations are usually right for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. But when they say it's misunderstood, it's the fact that people, they want the utility, but they don't know how to employ it to the best. They don't.
I agree with that.
They just see the thing. If it's up, they just pop it up, and then you say, "Oh, okay, we're gonna get it through with this comp because, fuck you, I'm part of the meta." And maybe I'm getting a little too emotional here because I've been I'm going to admit that I've been the victim of a person who has wanted to play the game, and because I wasn't playing a job that people wanted me to play, I was targeted for bullying and just toxicity in general.
Oh, I know how you feel, man.
Stormblood's been like, as good as it was in some situations, Stormblood's just been like the worst for me experience-wise because of this community. I'm gonna let people talk, and then I can just like reiterate other things in the process.
Sure, we can come back to that. So, so Aaron, I do have a question for you. So, let's say that you want to get an O12S clear, right? And the DPS looks like it's the only party available, right? And the DPS looks like Sam, Black Mage, Sam, and then there's an open spot for you.
2 Sams?
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of wanted to touch a little bit too on the whole meta thing too, right? I'll get to that one too, but like to me, I think it's more the higher end groups that it matters. You're gonna have a lot of mid core and even low tier groups that they're not gonna really care. The reason I think it can be frustrating for like monks is because people like their own numbers too. People like the Zergoth, and you don't really provide that, so you are gonna have a harder time finding a group on the type of group that you want. Like there's hundreds of mid tier groups that you'd be able to join, but you'd be doing progression a lot longer. So it also kind of depends on what kind of group you want. But the whole synergy thing, like what you just touched on with joining a group with 2 samurais or whatever in it as a bard, I would never do that. My class plays for crit buffs, and that just would not be fun to me. Being Mr. Happy level DPS, it's just it's not fun. Like I'm too much of a try hard to not want to be competitive. I want to be competitive on everything I do. And you take that away, it's kind of soul crushing. If you're not, because what's the point of being a try hard if you can't really flex? I'd play if I did see that, I would probably play like Machinist or something. Something I didn't care about. If I had, I could throw a gray up on and not really be salty because I don't play that class. You know what I mean? But yeah, if that was the only thing in Party Finder I saw, I would not play my main because I would not shit on my median. Simple as that. I'm a tryhard.
Yeah.
All right, Jabe. I want to hear your thoughts now. Go ahead.
It don't matter.
Give it to us.
I mean, there's not much more to say other than what everybody's already said. Like, if you're casual, if you want to do things your own way, then it don't matter. If you are a tryhard like Aaron and you want to go for those parses, yeah, it's gonna matter. The thing about the meta is, we were talking about numbers and stuff, is that those numbers don't even get crunched early on. You know what I'm saying? It's when you're first starting out on an X-Back, you only have a general idea of what's good and what the synergies are. So people will like look at the numbers later, and then they'll say, oh well, or even before the numbers come out, they'll look at the groups that cleared it first, right? They'll look at the world first people or the people that are hardcore and are clearing fast, and they'll see what are they taking, why are they taking it, and they'll be like, oh well, this must be the meta. And that's the people who are like mid-core raiders who kind of rely on other people going through the stuff first to get an idea of what's going on in the fight. So, and then when those people grab a hold of the idea of, oh, this is the meta, then those are the people who are driving the party finders, because they're pugging, right? Most of them are probably pugs. They probably don't have a static, or if they are trying to form a static, they're going to try and form a static in the meta that they've conceived in their mind, or the groupthink has conceived in their mind, and they're going to force people out because of they're not the meta. And basically what they're doing is they're using the meta as a crutch. They're not actually using the meta the way the meta should be used. So they're just using it as a crutch to get through content.
They're making it matter.
I agree 100%.
The DPS loss if you're using the meta wrong compared to just playing, one of them other samurai or black mages, like they do.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The people who enforce the meta are the people who are using it as a crutch, because they're not using it to speedrun. They're not using it to get high parses. They're using it to try and clear content. That's not how you're supposed to use the meta.
If you're doing it in Party Finder, you're probably not that good yourself. You're just looking for someone to help carry you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, but I'm the victim here. Anyway, go on.
If you want to say there's a meta to clearing content, okay, then those aren't based on the high tier numbers of pushing DPS. That's based on party synergy. And so if you want to say, hey, I want a group with party synergy to help me try and get through this, that's fine. Don't say it's the meta though, because it's just you looking for the most amount of synergy you can get out of a group. If you're gonna invoke the meta, you better be speed running, or you better be going for high parses, not trying to clear content.
There's a meta for progression though. That's the thing. I get what you're saying. It's not as pronounced as the speed kill meta, but there are jobs that just fare better in progression than other jobs for sure, and through that alone a meta is created.
That's true. I mean, Red Mage is obviously gonna be meta because you can res things like
It's just a different meta, right?
Yeah.
it's synergy. That's what it is. It's party synergy. What helps you get through this fight the easiest? If you want a dragoon and a bard, and you want scholar, so you can buff everybody's crit to get better crit levels, to get better DPS, to meet a DPS check. That's great, So, but if you're not like speed running or parsing, all you're doing is you're trying to invoke more group synergy. You don't need that group synergy to get through content, to clear content.
Well, it depends how early you're trying to clear too.
Well, yeah. See, if you're like world
Yeah.
first,
You already know this to begin with, so this isn't for you.
Yeah, it's just like you already know what to do anyways. And you're going to be pushing your job to the maximum to begin with at the minimum item level that is available, at the time. So that's why you're crunching numbers. That's why you're saying, "Oh, how much healing do we need to make it through this? How much mitigation do we need to make it through this?" But if you're just trying to force people out of your group because you think you can't clear the content with them, then it's not really the job. You're in the party finder, so people in the party finder are probably not maximizing their job, right?
Yeah.
And so you're basically saying, let's use this group comp because this group comp has the most synergy, and that's what people call the meta, But when you talk about the meta, a true meta is on a fight by fight basis, and you're really crunching the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I do agree with that point. There's like a prog meta and like a speed kill meta, and then it changes based on situation. When I was pugging Alphascape, I just wanted a bard or a machinist in the group because when you're progging, you tend to overheal, and suckers, it costs a lot of mana. Adlos cost a lot of mana. And it was kind of one of those things, like if I was pugging and there was like, I think we had a red mage, a black mage, and a summoner, and then like a samurai doing 11. It was difficult for Toasty and I because it was like, we had the mana shifts or whatever, but when people are dying, like that stuff just goes out the window. That resource is gone. So yeah, it's, for me, progging, I definitely want to have a bard or a machinist in my corner.
Yeah, right. So it makes it easier for you to progress. And there's nothing wrong with seeking jobs that make it easier for you to progress. In fact, that's where the idea comes from. To, be quote unquote meta is really what you're doing is you're seeking jobs to make the progression easier for you. To get through a fight, like we said earlier, red mage is super valuable in progression because of the reses. What else is super valuable? Tank wise, paladin. You want all that you want all those mitigation tools. So it's helping you get through the fights, and at the end of the day, are the people really forcing people out because they want more synergy, or are they forcing out people to make things easier for themselves? That's why I'm saying people are using meta as a crutch.
Oh, I want to touch on that. There have been several amount of Ulu warriors we invited into, trying to form a group, and they all said the same thing. I'm sorry, I'm used to having a ninja in the group. To keep aggro. Just to keep aggro.
Yeah, the whole like the war opener kind of changes with the ninja in the group because they can switch to
All you have to do is tomahawk.
yeah, they basically tomahawk switch to deliverance right off the bat.
Yeah, so ninja makes things easier for people, but that doesn't mean you can't be a warrior and not do ooh without a ninja.
I mean, yeah, it's 3 other buttons you have to push before deliverance. It's not that big of a deal.
Oh shoot, you lost 100 DPS. Oh my gosh. Oh.
But I'm gonna have blues now, Square Enix.
Fastest ooh parts, I think, doesn't even have any.
Wait, do you tomahawk and then go into deliverance on a warrior with a ninja?
Yep.
You
mean,
should be tomahawking and popping equilibrium.
Yeah, that's what I do. Tomahawk equilibrium. Yep.
And Thriller Battle. They both generate aggro.
Oh, I've just been doing like Unchained, going into Defiance, and then get my Storm's Path up or Storm's Eye.
I think a lot of people that do the minimum aggro opener is just Tomahawk. They do Equilibrium, Infuriate, and then Heavy Swing, and then Equilibrium or Thriller Battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually do, like, if I'm not sure about a group, I'll do I'll do Tomahawk, and then I'll do my Storm's Eye combo before switching to Deliverance, making sure to hit Equilibrium and Thrill of Battle, because you got to do Thrill of Battle for the upheaval.
Yeah, you want to do that. Yeah, it also depends on like how soon you're gonna do your opener with your. If I'm in a pug group, I'm straight up doing Eye, and I'm doing Butcher's Block because I don't know these people.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, it's like for me personally, if I was going into a pug party and I was playing warrior, or any tank for that matter, I'm going to make sure I keep up aggro first, regardless if I have a ninja or not. They don't know their skill. I don't know if they know their skills. I don't know what they're gonna do. It's just that I can't trust that they're gonna get the thing right. And it's the same thing with warrior, with every tanks, especially warriors. Even though they don't have a ninja, if you don't already know you don't have a ninja, you already should be doing it. You should be telling yourself in your head that you're going to prioritize aggro. That's the thing. A tank should be prioritizing holding the boss before going into numbers, before doing DPS. And a lot of people just like say, oh, because... And I don't know what it is. Honestly, a lot of people who play tank on this game tell me that the tanking in WoW is so much more fun than tanking in this game. It actually feels weaker here. That's what they say.
I don't know about that, so I mean, I've never played WoW, so I
don't know that either, but that's what they said. And it's like, then why are you playing tank? Are you being a greedy tank who just cares about DPS, or are you actually being a person who wants to clear the content and wants to be able to play the job effectively without having these problems? Your numbers don't really matter in the grand scheme of things until you actually go for the optimization run.
Well, I don't know about that. In pug groups, I'm DPSing more than some of the DPS, so...
yeah, okay. Yeah,
that's just like... I joined a pug group one time. I was a DPS, right? I was going with Red Mage, and I don't know.
Reiterating that part, yes, that's why I say that you should be going into these fights with the utmost best of your ability. If you're being dog shit, then you're a waste of time to me.
Well, I mean, so on the other side of that, though, like, sometimes people, they're just like, oh, it's a Final Fantasy game. There's Kefka and my favorite Final Fantasy friends, like, we're going to have a good time, and... I'm pushing buttons. Like, it's awesome. They don't go to Reddit and they don't look up openers or like, they don't keep their dots up because, they're pushing buttons. Like, they're hanging out with their friends and they're having a good time at Kefka and, all that stuff.
Mm.
Yeah. There was this one time I was in, it was back in Heavensward, and it was for the Relic step where you had to grind A1 Savage a bunch of times, and I was in this group, and the person wasn't doing a lot of DPS, and I was just trying to gently say, hey man, there's a couple things you could be doing to do better, because you want to burn it down before the second dude comes out, or you want to get it super low before it comes out, at least when you were doing that strat. Otherwise, your farm for light was not going to be very successful. And so this is just me trying to help somebody out, and they just were like, I'm like, you could be doing this a little bit better. And they were like, I'm just here for fun. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I mean, doing your job efficiently is fun, you know. So, and then they kind of left the next run. and then I was like, but they were doing better. I don't know why they left. You know, it's like, well, you kind of came off like a dick. And I'm just like, I guess you can't help people in this game, you know?
Well, I mean, it's all about how they take it to, you know, you could be sitting there giving them, like, constructive criticism and, you know, people get sensitive. They think that you, like, mean the absolute worst intentions, that they're terrible, you know, like, it's just, you know, how do you communicate, look, man, I'm just trying to help. Like, I want you to do better. I want you to succeed. You know, because it's a team game at the end of the day. Like, we're all working together for something, whether that be a normal raid kill or a savage raid kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was just one story, you know. So it's just like, you can try and teach people how to, you know, be more efficient, try to work towards being efficient for their job, being efficient in a fight, you know. But at the end of the day, you gotta ask yourself, you know, what are they playing the game for? And if it's not the meta, if it's not to be the top tier player that on FF logs, then, you know, people need to realize that that's okay. It's but at the same time, you know, you might not be playing with certain people because of that, you know.
Oh my god.
So, speaking of I would kind of like to segue into the next topic. Speaking of, like, trick attack or whatever, why not just give Sam or Monk trick attack? I mean,
because then Ninja would literally fall into, like, the goddamn pits.
Well, that's
like,
what I'm saying. Is this if what would be Square Enix's you know, response to job balance and making, you know, I guess all the jobs inclusive or non-inclusive? I don't know.
On what level? Between the different roles or between every job?
Well, I mean, it's like what we're talking about, right? You know, I asked Aaron the question about, you know, oh, there's a Sam, there's a Black Mage, there's, you know, nothing that really contributes to his because of the way that his job is based. He gets, you know, basically his DPS gets shat on. So, you know, what would be the answer to that if you don't have trick, you don't have disembowel, you know, that kind of stuff.
You don't have crits either.
Aaron, what's the answer?
I could answer that for him. That's just better distribution of utility. If we're talking about what Square Enix can do to make it more comfortable for people to play ranged DPS without being so strict about what's in their party, don't make one job have everything they literally want to enjoy playing that job. That's pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
Why does Dragoon have piercing debuff, and then Bard is so heavily reliant on crit, which it just so happens to be the best substat in the game? Dragoon has a buff that also shares a timer with Bard's battle voice. Like, why is there so much synergy there?
I mean, well, Bard and Dragoon start in the same place, you know, Lancer and Archer, right? So
is that an excuse for why the synergy there is just not good?
So what's the you know, excuse of when you say excuse, what are you looking for? You know,
why does Bard and Dragoon come synergize so well with each other? Is the question. Well, because that's a poison.
They both use piercing damage, right?
That's one poison.
So if they both use piercing, why not give them buffs to complement each other already? If that's the case, you know, I'm not against distributing more utility among the jobs, but at the same time, you don't have to sacrifice utility as well.
I'm not saying sacrifice utility, it's design it better, right? So I'll give you an example of a dependency that exists that's nowhere near as toxic as Dragoon and Bards. Monk and Warriors. Monk's Brotherhood buffs damage every 90 seconds by 5%. It's the same exact time as inner release. That means they line up. the same every time. But since 90 seconds is such a bad window for bursting, it's while it does exist, it's not as toxic as being able to have battle voice and battle litany up for every single burst window, or having double crit buff, not double crit buff, double ranged, and then having two into Dragoon, and then your healers now have double refresh, which means casters have to try harder to justify a reason for being in the party, right? If we want to dissect all of the problems that each job has, the only one who doesn't run into any issues that's related to Dragoon and Bard is White Mage and Dark Knight. Those are the only two jobs whose their position in their meta, their respective metas, is not related to how powerful ranged physical DPS are. Right? Dragoon is S tier because of disembowel. That is there, or if we're going to talk about broken, if there is a tier list, Dragoon is the most broken DPS because of disembowel. It cannot be debated. It simply is. Buffing ranged physical DPS is damaged by 5%. Everything they do for 100% of the time that the boss is active, that's just way too much. And then if ranged physical DPS weren't so strong and pivotal to the success of a group, then it probably wouldn't be as toxic as it is. For example, you don't need a monk to clear content. Warrior can function just fine without a monk, right? But if a warrior has a monk, they just perform better.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? But you need a refresh to clear a fight, or at least a harder fight, right? Especially in progression, right? You need
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
at that point. It's not you could do without it. Mana shift will get you there. It won't. You need it.
So I guess this is. I guess we're still talking about the same. Because it still boils down to, it does meta matter, and yeah, it does for this.
That's not a discussion of whether or not meta matters. It's whether or not proper job balance.
It does, because if you're talking about, like, should jobs have more spread utility, like, I'm not really sure you can do that without making all jobs almost identical.
No, what I said is be careful how you distribute utility.
But I'm just saying that
like monk again,
the utility of I get what you're saying, like, but what I'm trying to say is that when you start making jobs less synergistic together, you start making everything else more synergized together.
Not necessarily, right? And again, we can look right at the monk and warrior comparison, because monk and warrior have what you could call an unhealthy synergy, because they directly influence each other, right? Like there was a reason that I'm
trying to drive at a point here, and I'm not getting there because you keep interrupting. So,
I mean, continue then. I'm sorry.
I'm driving at that. There's jobs that work well together, and there's jobs that aren't so great together. So, and this is what comes up to be a meta, which is fine. It's all right in your game to have jobs that work better together, because there's so many jobs to begin with. Like, I don't think you can make as many jobs as there are in this game and not have jobs that don't work well together, while others do work really well together. But that only comes into play because of the meta.
You're missing the point I'm trying to make completely. The point I'm trying to make, and I think Aaron agrees 100% with me, because this is his main argument for why he doesn't like Bard, is that jobs shouldn't have unhealthy synergies that are dependencies of that job. Right?
You say that.
Bard needs a Dragoon in the party to do their maximum damage.
The Bard's signature move needs crit buffs. That the signature move that gives you a bunch of 420 potency moves don't happen unless you have crit moves. Your class is literally unplayable if you can't use the signature move.
And this is only a problem because Bard is so OP, right?
No,
with
because
that.
machinist has the same exact problem because without a dragoon, they don't have disembowel, right? So nobody wants to play those jobs. But then the healers run into a dependency issue because they need refresh, right? So in order to make your healers happy, you have to get a ranged DPS. And in order to get someone to play that, you got to make them happy. So you have to get a dragoon. This is the reason why dragoon is broken. That's not a healthy synergy by any means. It's not the same thing as having jobs that just have certain things that work well together. That is a unhealthy synergy, and it's the reason why Samurai is the way it is. Because it can't compete with Monk and Ninja when Dragoon is already saying those two have to compete for the other slot that a melee could have. That's the point I'm trying to make. I understand there's a meta. But
How many
that's not what
jobs
I'm-
get their signature move that's reliant on another class to happen?
I actually did not know that one about what's the move called again?
Wander's
Perfect.
Minuet, Pitch Perfect.
Pitch Perfect.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't get stacks.
You have two dots up that each time they crit, so you can get two procs per 3-second cycle. And if you don't have a high crit rate based on your Dragoon Scholar synergy, you're basically sitting around 30% open. Pull something out of your ass. When you have the two, you're sitting around 70-80%, and it's proccing like crazy. Like the class just feels unplayable when you just lose 2,000 plus potency out the gate.
You're not even mentioning the fact that disembowel is another reason.
Disembowel
why.
is broken,
Right? And then
if you want to mix up classes, you need to have the range be able to put disembowel up,
So
or
someone else do it,
or
not-
somebody else.
So
And you
here's the
also have
question.
to make a class not dependent on another, like that crit. The crit rate thing should be just a flat percentage based thing.
Here's the
And you
question.
balance it off that, because
Uh,
how are you going to mix and match
hold on.
something that you can't balance without the proper comp, right?
You want to see something, Jay?
But here's the question: is can you clear regular content without piercing and without high crit?
You can, but you'll be doing tank level DPS.
Not.
But you can't do it. So your synergy is really your highest synergy is dependent upon this meta comp. But the meta comp only works, in the situations where you're trying to do high DPS. Right?
We're talking about balance between classes, though, right? Like
we already all said that.
But the
there's a
what
fight
but what
between
but the
concepts.
balance is about the meta.
So I guess what
But we already said the meta doesn't really matter if you're trying to clear content.
Right. But what we're trying to say is that some jobs just don't. They have unhealthy, toxic synergies that make the meta a lot harder for other jobs. Because you said it yourself, right? You went on a little tangent about why we all understand that the meta doesn't necessarily matter to anybody. It has implications that still do apply to everybody. For example, trying to get into a prog party as, say, a black mage or a samurai probably won't go very well for you because somebody has meta expectation. So while it may not necessarily be applicable to them, it does matter. And so the point we're trying to make is it's a meta is not healthy when you get to the drawing board and because you want one job that's so good, but you need another job to make that job better. And because you want these two jobs, you have to have this one job. So now the other jobs
they
that
were
could
going for. I think that's exactly what they were trying to do when they did that.
I don't think so because they flat out nerfed disembowel since it was the way it was in Heaven's Ward.
I mean, just because they nerf it doesn't mean that's what they're just trying to make it a little bit better for everybody else. That's all they were trying to do.
Yeah, and it didn't work. So they've acknowledged that ranged physical DPS are too strong. They flat out said it.
Which is fine. Like if you have jobs that are stronger than other jobs, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. but
There's always
it becomes
And
it comes
if
it
they're
becomes a
stronger
problem.
because of the synergy they have,
It
with
becomes
other
a
jobs,
problem
there's
when it
nothing wrong
starts
with that.
completely invalidating other jobs, which is where we get to samurai. Like,
It
let's
invalidates them at the meta level.
Yes.
You should look
I mean-
at the highs and the lows of each job with the meta comp and with a trash comp. There should not be that
Yeah.
huge gap between. Like if you had let's say you had a bard with complete trash comp, no crit buffs, no disembowel, it would be dog shit. And then you put it in the meta comp, it would be an overly
For the sake of not dragging on this point, I think Aaron's stated his case. Let's agree to disagree here, Jay, because this is your thought process. Correct me if I'm wrong anywhere. As long as you believe that as long as all jobs can clear content, the synergies that happen between them, regardless of how impactful they are in scenarios, don't really matter at any level aside from the highest. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm hearing from you. Am I incorrect?
I'm saying that that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, that's fine. It's okay for you to have your stance.
You could say it's broken. That's because it is broken, but
It shouldn't exist. Personally,
there's nothing wrong with broken.
yes. Definitely.
Jobs.
There definitely is something wrong with broken jobs, for sure.
I think OP job is fine. You know, they're OP. You know, you become good at them. You learn what's good. You learn what the meta is. And
well, they're
you
also
do that.
trying to make the game simpler, and the way to make it simpler is to balance the class better too. So that kind of goes hand in hand, right?
You could have a solid meta and it not be full of unhealthy synergies, right? Is there a reason why Scholar is the undisputed best healer, right? You can't argue that. Scholar is the undisputed best healer. Has a crit buff, which goes hand in hand with the undisputed best DPS, Dragoon, and arguably the second undisputed best DPS, Bard. All three of them closely, directly synergize with each other.
So here's
if we're talking
about
if we're not talking about just clearing content and we're analyzing the meta as it stands and how we feel about it, that's not healthy, and nobody genuinely agrees that it is. There have been many outcries for the removal of disembowel from casual and hardcore players alike.
Please remove disembowel, please.
Simply because jobs like Samurai get dumpstered. And it does get dumpstered. Let's not sit here and act like it doesn't, for the reason I mentioned earlier. You want healers, your healers want refresh, so you gotta have a range. But if you want a range, you gotta have piercing. Dragoon, of the 2 melee slots, gets slotted in. That means you have 3 melees fighting for 1 slot. Ninja, arguably the best option of the 3, right? But then Monk, if you want to try taking a Monk instead of a double ranged or a caster, you can do that. But you're taking a Ninja, and you have to take a Dragoon. Right? Where does Samurai get any sort of break in there? Again, we're not talking about at casual level clearing what you want, because those people don't care and will play whatever they want to begin with. But if we're analyzing the meta and how we feel about it, I'm not saying Samurai needs to be meta, but the reason why it's not meta is not fair. And that's because Dragoon is guaranteed a slot in a party, simply because it has the ability to just do 3 buttons, and it's the best job in the game. 3 buttons, right? 1, 2, disembowel up for the rest of the time. It isn't even like Bard has to be good at managing their songs, right? Keeping their songs up 100% of the time so you can abuse the resources that they get. Or Ninja has to work very hard to keep Trick Attack up every minute, and doing so in certain fights become a chore, and even brings into question whether or not you want to have that Ninja. Or a Monk who has to... Let me finish.
Fixing the meta entails what then?
Better balance, right?
Because you're just talking about details that only matter like to a very small amount of people.
But I just said we were talking about the meta, right?
Right. And we started off the conversation, does the meta matter?
Well, we moved on for that topic. Reggie clearly stated away from that.
We realized that meta only matters to certain people.
Yeah.
Okay. And we talked about that.
And then, talking about the synergy, how you say it's an unhealthy synergy.
Okay.
I think that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that because it only matters at the meta level.
And that's fine. You can have your belief. I mean, it doesn't only matter at the meta level, because in progression, Scholar is still the healer you always take. You don't really see those White Mage Astro groups ever. And if you do, they're very lucky, and usually they end up complaining about it anyway.
Oh my
I
god,
mean-
I complained so much.
I mean,
in
it
White
would
Mage
make
Astro.
party finders harder to fill too, if you
Actually,
think about
what's
it.
your-
If you want even mid-core and casuals, running like as a bard, you're just gonna wait until you see a group with the drag or a machinist. You're gonna wait until a group with that's looking for a dragoon is going. So somebody's gonna be sitting there for hours.
Reggie, what's your take on all this? Since what's going on?
So I actually I like a lot of Sora's points, and I would like to get to one of Jabe's points, but I do think that it's not good to have I want more options when it comes to rating and things like that, because I feel like I pretty much I got into Scholar, and then I had to stay Scholar because everybody needs a Scholar. We need a Scholar. It needs to happen, I think it'd be cool to play Sam or Monk or Black Mage or things like that, but they don't
Gotta play Dragoon because you got a Bard.
right. So it's but another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on was, you were saying like we need to have better job balance, and that means changing the way that we do disembowel and other buffs, the way that they synergize each other. And Jabe might be right. Maybe it was intended the way that is intended because they wanted us to do this, but
Having a whole role relying on one job is the worst possible way of this.
well, we don't know. We're not inside the dev's head, so we don't know exactly how but what I'm trying to say is that if we start balancing, right, like, is there a point where things become homogenized and jobs lose their identity because of that?
I mean, yeah, that's what I've been trying to say the whole time, is that if you start giving utility to everybody, then everybody just kind of becomes the same.
I never said to do that. I just said change the way you give utility to certain jobs.
Yeah, the problem that he's trying to make is that these whole resistance debuffs are actually hurting the class. They're hurting the game.
But
Yes,
how do
they
you do that other than start giving the same utilities to everyone?
You change. All right.
That's
so I'll give you-
where
I'll
we're
give
at
you
with
the-
the role actions.
I'll
right
give
now.
you the prime example of how to fix this issue without necessarily hurting the impact of the jobs that as they stand, right? And it'll help other jobs, right? So disembowel is our current big problem. It is it only comes from one job, and as we know, two jobs, possibly three, if they decide to make dancers throwing weapons deal piercing damage, will require the use of a Dragoon, which means our problem where we stand now only gets worse. On top of that, we have 4 melee DPS that are impossible to balance right now because one of them is guaranteed a slot, granted that it has disembowel. The
So-
best possible solution,
No,
the best
go
possible
ahead.
solution, in my opinion, is to give disembowel to a caster DPS, not a ranged DPS, because Square Enix has made it clear, and I do agree with them, that ranged DPS have the highest potential to be broken with their utility to get disembowel for themselves. So if you give it to a caster DPS, you do not need Dragoon anymore. So now an argument becomes, if I have, let's say, use Red Mage, because Red Mage already has piercing damage abilities, right? It's the best. If we had to pick a caster, I'd give it to them. If you have to use a, if you use a Red Mage and you want to bring a Bard and Machinist for refresh, right? Because you want the mana, you can now bring a Samurai and a Monk, or a Monk and a Ninja. You don't need Dragoon anymore. Dragoon is no longer forcibly slotted because it has disembowel, right? An entire role no longer has to rely on one job. You get two, and just by giving one other job two, you now are giving a Red Mage an argument to be in a possible speed run party, if we're talking about the highest level, because then we could Monk and Samurai's damage no longer has to contribute piercing. So it changes the dynamic and the way all the jobs synergize with each other a lot just by giving that one buff to another job. And it doesn't inherently make Dragoon worse, because if Red Mage ends up still being a worse option than Dragoon, then at the highest level only, people will still use Dragoon Bard. But at all levels, if you just want to play Bard and do max damage, you can take a Red Mage as substitute, and then you can have a Monk and a Samurai, and they don't have to worry about that issue. It's just better for everyone.
Might even be better pending the fight, too, because meta also changes fight to fight, and with all the classes performing different, you're going to be getting more interesting results, too.
But I can tell you right now, and everyone here agrees, that having one job that unlocks the full damage of 2 jobs, an entire role, is completely stupid. I mean, they nerfed it once, so they know it's stupid.
So, you talked about how, like, Dancer, whether that's, like, piercing or slashing. So, I mean, if it is piercing, like, you're still going to need a Dragoon, right? Like, assuming that things stay the same way that they already are. If it's...
God, rest help Dragoon, because everyone's going to want them. And, well, God help everyone who's not a Dragoon.
Well, and then if it's slashing, I mean...
Sure. That can change it, the dynamic in the exact same way. Actually, it might make it worse, because then Samurai, whose only real argument to bring is if you don't want to bring a ninja and you don't want to bring a warrior, but you want to have slashing for your Paladin Dark Knight comp, you could, in theory, bring a Samurai. But if you choose to bring a Dancer instead, Samurai actually has nothing. That's the only thing you can make an argument for, because like we're currently doing Uwa with a Paladin Dark comp. And so we could get by with a ninja or a samurai, and that's already a hard fight for samurai to make an argument for on its own. So I mean, even if Dancer does deal slashing damage, I doubt it'll have the ability to apply it. But I mean, let's just hope it's not that this piercing issue gets tackled in the future and finally dealt with, because it's not healthy as in its current iteration.
I mean, I know you say it's an unhealthy composition, but it's really not so much a product of the game. It's more so a product of people playing the game. Like, the meta is what you make it out to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's what
but the meta has applications at more than just the highest level, even though it should only matter to the highest level. Like, for example, if we're not talking about speed killing and we're talking about progression, you can ask anybody. Like, it doesn't matter, hardcore, casual player. If they're interested in progression, they're probably bringing a bard and a machinist because their healers are going to need refresh. And more often than not, they're probably going to take a scholar with their white mage or astro, but they're probably not going to take an astro or white mage, right?
What you call casual, I call mid-core. I don't think you really understand casual mindset.
Casual players is anyone who's really, like, not hardcore, if we're being honest, right? Because the term hardcore, mid-core, and casual is actually used to determine how often you raid.
A casual doesn't really even pay attention to the meta. They play what they want to play.
Exactly, right?
What they want to play.
And when they start
at a casual group in the pug, in the party finder,
how many casual CUG groups do prog with a samurai, 2 samurais and a black mage and like a red mage? How many groups do you know do that?
I mean, are they static groups? Because those static groups don't exist.
Why?
Wait. No, those casual stacks do exist. It's just they don't care as much as to get in. They just play for the game for fun, right?
Yeah,
they're going to play the game for fun. They're not going to play the game to.
The casual static isn't going to take 2 samurais and a black mage, right?
Well, why? You clearly feel like they don't care about what they bring, so why wouldn't they take that comp?
They're not. They're not gonna take 2 samurais and a black mage.
Why?
I mean, okay, no. I think what he means
it's
is
mostly in the party finder that you see that stuff happen. If you're a static, you have a little bit more understanding of, hey, we want to get through this.
So are you not a casual static? Does that not exist?
a casual static is gonna have like people that have played together a long time, right? But
Not
they
true.
don't go together. I mean, a casual static is most likely gonna be people who are friends, not people who randomly meet up in the party finder and do stuff. So they have an idea of what they want to do, and they're okay with it taking a long time. They know their skill level may not be the best, but at the same time they're aware of there are things they can do to synergize. So they're gonna work on trying to synergize a little bit better.
So is that a
Where
mid-core?
in the party finder, you're gonna find people who are just trying to get some practice in. They're gonna try and see as far into the fight as they can. They don't really care about the comp. So that's when you're gonna get two samurais at a black mage. You know, if somebody's really doing stuff like that.
So the casual players are going to care about the composition, is what you're saying. That the
They're
casual
not gonna
players-
care. They're not gonna care as much.
I
but
know they're not going to care
they're
as
not-
much as the hardcore, but they're going to take notice of it,
Okay.
right?
I think
Yeah.
a example to put it is
If you're talking about a static.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about the party finder, people aren't really gonna care.
You're going to see it in the party finder for progression.
I think
Probably
I mean,
not for farm and echo especially, but you'll see it.
you'll see it at certain levels, but not at the lowest level. That's what I'm saying.
nice
It's
thing
hard
about
to
this-
it's hard to see the lowest level from a PF, right?
But people are, I mean, a lot of people who are pugs, you know, they're just trying to get into the fight and see the fight.
Yeah. And eventually you'll start to see some of those pugs just lock out certain slots to certain roles. I'm not even talking about certain jobs. You'll see some pugs have 2 melees, 1 ranged, 1 caster. That's typically what you see, right?
That's fine. That's their priority, but not everybody does that.
Yeah, but you can't tell if that's a casual or a mid-core or anything
Okay,
from
can I
that.
say something, guys? The casual player, at best, is going to want to bring these. There's going to be a separate amount of roles. They're not going to repeat 2 samurai if they know that they're going to need LB3 to clear the fight, or it's
Yeah.
actually like it's like. Remember a success with the robots on the Thor floor with the elevation mechanic.
Oh yeah.
You needed LB3, either 2 or 3, in order to kill those those ads, to make it less of a hectic problem. Because there's also a DPS check in that thing. There's a timer on it. You didn't want to spend too much time on what's the name of that guy?
Which fight are you talking about?
So
You're
we're
talking about
talking about-
A6? Is
So
that
we're talking about a
The Cup of the
pug.
Sun.
What's the point?
I can't hear
We're
Jay.
driving at?
Can you hear me now?
What fight are you talking about?
The Cup of the Sun Savage.
Yeah, A6. So the Vortexer, you trying to get the LB for the Vortexer is what you're talking about.
Not the Vortexer, the one before the Vortexer. The point is, I'm
Oh,
trying to say
you
is,
talking about all the ads that spawn?
yeah. The point
Yeah,
I'm trying to
that's 'cause
say
you have
is,
a shit DPS.
what I'm trying to say is, I mean, yes, but at best, the casual group knows it's going to need a separate amount of jobs they can't repeat, because if they repeat, they don't get the LB3. They don't get the LB3, and maybe in Uwu they don't get the LB3 either.
They might not even know that.
Yeah, that too.
So there's definitely some, like, I don't know, in nursing school we have like nurse education when we're trying to like basically like tell people, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't eat so much sugar because you're diabetic. You know, it's kind of like, I feel like that's kind of the same way when it comes to people that don't really like take this game seriously or don't really care about the teamwork aspect of it.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be like, okay, there's a thing here. We can't have 2 black mages because of LB. We need the LB for this. You know, yada, yada, yada. Do you even know this? Why are you doing Blizzard 3? I don't understand.
See, and most casual statics, if they don't know that, they will know that eventually, and then somebody will change to accommodate. You know? So
Yeah, the community's pretty good about telling people, you know, that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, speaking of which, we're getting close to the end of our show. So if you guys want to go down the list and do some closing thoughts, you know, and then you know, we'll end the show and then we'll pick this up. We're not gonna do a show next week because Avengers Endgame comes out and we got tickets for it, so I won't be here on Thursday.
Okay.
But yeah, go Iron Man. Anyway, so
So fucking hyped.
yeah, dude. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, man.
Hmm?
Any closing thoughts, or you said your
I
piece,
mean-
or
I mean, the only thing I've got to say is that I think there are certain roles that are more likely to just be well known at any level of play, right? Like at any level of play, you obviously are gonna want to range physical DPS, even though you don't necessarily need one until you realize that you do, because you need MP, right? So while I don't think the Dragoons will always be seen at any level of play, I know Bard and Machinist and Scholar typically will be seen at any level of play. Sometimes you'll see the White Mage Astro comp, though it's very rare. It's just I honestly think that if that right there, if they could get rid of Dragoon's heavy impact and overbearing nature on the DPS balance, things would be a lot healthier for the game overall at the highest level. As I said before, I'm not one of those people that thinks the meta applies to everybody, but I do acknowledge that it does have some applications to everyone. I truly do believe that at the lowest level of play, at the 99% of the player base doesn't really care. They'll play whatever they want, and the meta doesn't matter to them. But I do think that it does have applications to them that they may not be obviously aware to.
all right, Jin, what you got?
I'll leave myself last. Let Aaron talk.
Okay, Aaron, what you got, man?
Now, I mean, is this a closing deal? That's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
So, basically, just say goodbye, or is that what I'm? Is that
Yeah.
closing?
Closing thoughts on the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, on the conversation. All right. I don't know.
You were watching
roll
Happy
up.
Stream, weren't you?
But I don't know, man. I mean, some small tweaks. I think any comp's pretty viable. I feel like a lot of that subject's been kind of beaten to the ground. So, Marin Hellfire, Gilgamesh, on the talk, give me a shout.
Jabe, do you have any final thoughts?
I just think the game just needs to be fun. You know, that's all there really is to it. You know, the balance can come into the game and help out on different levels, but at the end of the day, if the game is fun, people are gonna play it. At the meta level, you know, people having synergies and stuff like that, I think is okay. You know, I don't have a problem with other jobs being preferable at the meta level, because that's what a meta is. You know, you make certain jobs more preferable for doing specific things. So if parsing and if speed runs weren't a thing and we were just trying to kill the fight, I'm not even sure we would have as much issue as we do in the community, you know. But then again, maybe we would, because, you know, just people pick up on things, right, and then they harp on it, and the people who do that are the people who are using those ideas as a crutch to get through the content and not playing their jobs optimally. Because, like we said earlier, like the devs have made it to where pretty much almost any comp can get through a fight. You know, it's just not going to be optimal. So, you know, I think there are things they can do to make it to where people don't exclude jobs. Well, that's probably the main thing that I would want to see. You know, the exclusion of jobs partially is on the devs, but it's partially on the community as well. You know, so it's you can say balancing the jobs, but really it's kind of balancing ideas in the community.
I mean, that's the whole options point that Sora was pounding down.
Literally. You fix that by giving more options.
I mean, you can give more options, right? But you can do it in a way that is fun to the game. No, and I'm okay with.
Just give Red Mage a piercing debuff and people will take Sam. That's my example. Like,
I mean, you could even just give Bard their own ability to give a piercing debuff.
I mean, Bard should. They need to change the whole.
Most jobs can give their own buffs to each other, right? Except for like Paladin and Dark Knight. They can.
I'm not even gonna give my opinion on this. Yoshi P flat out said they do not want to give ranged physical DPS the ability to apply piercing debuff because they know they're already too strong as they are. Just gonna throw that out there.
I mean, they're already too strong because they forced that comp, as you were saying earlier, right? Because the piercing of Dragoon is the only one.
It's because a Bard without crit buffs and piercing is dick.
It's because they have refresh, which is arguably the most important buff. Yeah, we're getting off topic.
So it's just damage, right? So it's just damage.
A lot of damage. Like
refresh? No, that's like your healer's lifeline.
Which is because they're doing damage, right? So
or healing. Healing spells are very potent.
I mean, if you know how to heal, right?
Closing thoughts.
But I mean, if you're using your cooldowns, right, you should be fine.
Especially in progression, that's not true at all. You can run out of MP even with refresh very quickly.
Yeah, progging is really hard without refresh. Just because, just because of how much mana suckers and raises and AoE healing costs. But anyway, Jin, closing thoughts.
I think the devs made this game with the intention that any class was going to clear. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think any class was meant to be left out. If it was, then it would be a really serious issue. I think you can clear Ultimate with the fucking Samurai and the fucking Monk and the Black Mage. It'd be harder, yeah, and there's no telling what's going to happen in Shadowbringers. They might surprise us. They might not change anything. It'll be really disappointing, though, if they keep... It feels like there's a status quo, okay? And this status quo, which is basically the meta, is going to... It's like, if you break the status quo in any way, you're going to get dogged on by people. And not just in the game, also in Twitch. And they use this a lot. They do this a lot because they know it gets them views. They know it's going to, like... create a form of like telling people, hey, this guy does this, you shouldn't take him or whatever. Not to get too off topic, but at the same time, the community is partially responsible for the state of the game as the way it is right now in terms of the meta. You don't need the meta to clear the game, but people are going to want the meta in order to, and they're going to misunderstand. Like Jabe said, mid-core people are going to take the meta and they don't really understand why the meta is the way it is. They're not going to play at the highest skill level. They're going to play that way because it's just going to do the bare minimum of what they think it's going to do. And they may not even be that good in the first place to play the game. And they still clear content for other reasons. Not because they went to the meta comp. And at the end of the day, like, even you said it, Sora, you're an advocate of people who play what they want to play, but as long as they play... And I think Sif would say the same thing. If you're going to play this job... you're already doing the most amount of damage or doing the amount of damage you're expected to that should be representing this job in the first place. If you're not doing that, then yeah, you should get the fuck out. Don't be in this party. And I think these things with the whole Samurai, a Monk, Black Mage being a meme in the community is basically just the way it is because it just creates this whole stigma on the fact that, if a Samurai, a Black Mage, or a Monk dies, they're fucking useless. They're just a useless class. But a Dragoon and a Ninja can die anytime?
Well,
is
that
what it is?
If a Ninja dies, they're useless. If a Dragoon dies, they're not completely useless.
They're not completely useless, but it shouldn't... But that's what the community thinks. And it shouldn't be that way. It's a groupthink, like I said. The fact that Yoshi P had to say to stop this groupthink where Black Mage and Samurai cannot be won with on a party comp is already a fact that there's a problem in this game, in the community itself.
The problem is, though, well, I'm closing thoughts. Go on.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts.
So, I mean, there's definitely more we can dive into when, we're talking about it, because it's a pretty deep, pretty vast, involving the community and kind of like you said, Twitch streamers and things like that. Go on. You had something else to say?
Yeah. I'm just going to end it on this, though. I think the only way we're going to we're going to have a healthy community in terms of the raid is if it breaks the status quo just a little bit in order for them to see that, hey, what you thought at the past is not always going to be applicable to all things, even if you don't get the buffs you want.
We're kind of seeing that. We're kind of seeing that now. I just want to let you know that Black Mage has highest speed.
Yeah.
In all of the fights right now, it's the number one constant. So the theory that pure DPS won't beat high utility. The threshold for that has officially been reached. Black Mage is not a meme anymore.
The easier part for Black Mage is competing with, not a lot at that position.
Yeah.
Like, I don't... Like, the damage is so much higher than the other two casters, if you still want to have Virus. Machinist is kind of dick. It's just... The competition it has is kind of like, compared to melees, where the competition is more kind of set in that, unless you're going to run 3 melees, it's kind of more set. Like, you'd have to be pretty fucking even more broken than a Black Mage, I feel, for Samurai to work, just because of the utility the other 2 melees bring.
For sure.
Yeah.
Samurai is a dead end spot right now, but
at the end of the day, we won't see any of these changes until Shadowbringers. If it's something happens, I'm all for it. I really am hoping that they knock us out of the floor from with what they bring. But
make it a rock class.
Yeah.
Give it a damage down move.
Yeah, right.
Like,
at any rate, this is just my closing thoughts. I'm just gonna always be an advocate care of the guy who says fuck the meta, play what you want, and just be at the best of your level. Be competitive.
Yeah, I didn't mind having Monk as long as you weren't dog shit.
I know.
I'm not.
Well, that's still up for the debate.
Yeah.
Dog shit monks are like, yikes.
Yeah. Anyway, that's
just play the game, have fun.
Right.
That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
Anyway. So at the end of the day, like we all have different ideas and different opinions, but
Jay over here regurgitating the shit everybody knows. Keep going.
We all are friends, and we all respect each
need
other's
to-
opinions.
Yeah, keep it at the base level.
And I would like to say that I do hope that when Shadowbringers comes out, that not only do they focus on the healer balance, but they kind of focus on the overall balance, because I think it'd be great to see more variations when it comes to comps, and maybe hopefully that way more people can get into raid and be able to compete a little bit. But that being said, this has been a Misfortunate podcast named Tentative. Next week we'll see you all. We'll see y'all next week. Or I'm sorry, Avengers Endgame comes out 2 weeks. So
A week after.
So I'd like to thank everybody for being here today and everybody watching on Twitch. I'm Reggie.
I'm Sora.
I'm Jen.
I'm Aaron Hellfire, aka Mr. Happy Fanboy.
Go on.
I want to do his level of DPS one day.
One day.
Jay Black, the guy who can't get a point because he always gets cut off.
All right, and we'll see you all in a couple weeks. Thanks so much for watching.